Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a show where we rumble and try very hard not to stumble as we cover the issues on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, sometimes right across the globe if we have the time. I'm Robin Adair, and across town in his command post is the 007 of Croatia, the man with the iron lung, the Croatian sensation himself, John Jurisic.
Jesus. Okay.
We should play James Bond music in the background. James Bond music could come on right now.
Yeah, we're going to have it. How you doing, Robin? Amazing intro. Yeah, welcome to the Rumble, sometimes Stumble Room. Never a dull moment. Rockin' Robin, baby. Ah, man. Anyway, really excited today to be chatting with Troy DeSouza.
Yes.
He's going to be, he's a top Victoria lawyer, friends of ours for a long time, very politically active, now very much involved in his law practice. I got lots of questions. I don't understand some of the recent things that are going on around illegal issues, those being catch and release of criminals. Can he answer questions like, why don't lawbreakers spend more time in jail? I mean, if I stole this pen, you'd be doing the show without the Croatian sensation. I can tell you that. I'd be behind bars. If prisons aren't the answer, what's the solution to our growing street crime? We got to get into the legal silo of all of what's going on.
That's right. Because I know even the police don't have the answers to that. And I don't know that Troy has all the answers, but I sure know he has some opinions. So we'll look forward to that.
Right.
And you're right. I've known Troy for nearly 20 years and really looking forward to talking to him. But a few other things to cover first.
Yeah.
And perhaps we'll start off with Aaron Gunn. You may recall Aaron Gunn, that online conservative broadcaster who decided that he wanted to run for the leadership of the BC Liberal Party. And, a pretty interesting response, largely negative from the BC Liberals. Some candidates like Michael Lee coming out swinging, saying that Gunn didn't look good on big issues like inclusion and on reconciliation. And I guess there's some irony to the fact that actually a First Nations representative, who of course is Ellis Ross, who is also running for the leadership, said he thought that Gunn should be allowed to run. So it wasn't universal, but there certainly was concern in the ranks and file of the BC Liberals. In the end, the Liberal Party's Leadership Election Committee ruled that Gunn could not enter the race. And they said accepting him would be inconsistent with BC Liberals' commitment to reconciliation, diversity, and acceptance of all people in British Columbia. Well, here's his reaction.
2 weeks ago, I announced my intention to seek the leadership of the BC Liberal Party and with it, the premiership of British Columbia, believing that despite the party's many failings, from the carbon tax to money laundering to the opioid epidemic, that it was best reformed from the inside in time to challenge the NDP before the next election. Unfortunately, it would appear I am already too late. As yesterday, the party, and by party I mean a secretive, unelected board of 7 people, made the shocking and difficult to comprehend decision to block my candidacy, depriving the membership of their democratic right to choose their own leader while sending a clear and unmistakable signal to all British Columbians that conservatives and those who believe in common sense and freedom of speech are no longer welcome in today's BC Liberal Party.
Robin, on Facebook, I've been seeing Facebook, Twitter, whatever else, folks saying that now the Liberals have denied free speech. Some crazy people invoking some kind of First Amendment as though it applies to Canada. We'll see what happens here. There's this entire domain that you and I live in, this digital universe of advocacy and discussion and commentary that will have impact to these decisions. These sort of political decisions never happen in silos anymore. So we'll see what happens. I'm quite sure it's not ended. Aaron he's anti-vaccine, he's anti-carbon tax. These are things that I know I'm against, and a lot of folks are against, but does he have a right to run? Does he have a right to say that? Man, I don't know. I think he does. Does he have a right? So we'll see where this all ends. Man, let's face it. BC Liberals want to win the election again. Somehow or another, they got to live in the middle, in the middle of the road. And yet there are these very vocal voices on the edges. Not sure how this is all going to settle out, Robin.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he's actually on the edges. He does represent some BC Liberals in some things that he talks about. Like he would like to see the party change its name to something that's not containing the word liberal in it. Many BC Liberals are conservatives. But, he's been very outspoken in areas that people today don't like really being outspoken about. Things like reconciliation are so important to so many Canadians, and it stirs the pot. And I just want to say one more thing, and we'll move on from Aaron Gunn. I want to talk just for a moment about the BC Liberals Leadership Committee's chair, and that was Roxanne Helm. And I know Roxanne Helm very well. Roxanne Helm, a prominent lawyer in Victoria, member of the Victoria Police Board. And, she also ran for the BC Liberals in Oak Bay Gordon Head. I had the privilege of working closely with her during that campaign. And I can tell you in my mind, Roxanne Helm is the epitome of real good decision-making and integrity. And so I don't doubt that she took a very careful look at this and came up with an honest and carefully thought out decision. So that's the verdict. See what Aaron Gunn does, but he will not be, it looks like, the leader, or the next leader at least, of the BC Liberal Party. And now it's time for our next topic, John.
Yeah, well, we're going to be chatting about Aaron Gunn again. That's guaranteed. Our next topic, what is it? Our next ongoing topic that we've been chatting about for, a year and a half? Okay, no, maybe a year. Vaccine passports.
Yes. Remember
Half of our bazillion.
Jeff Bray, remember we said we were in favor of them, and Jeff Bray, the Downtown Business Association, said, no, I don't know if that's the right step. But now, of course, we've got them. People are actually, I think, largely pleased with the decision. And I think a lot of business people have moved towards that decision as well. And I'm sure Jeff Bray's on side with it now.
Like anything else, Robin, okay, so the vaccine passport comes out provincially. Oh my God, we got to download it onto our phone. And then all this fuss about okay, that ends. Everyone's got it. Somehow or another, that went away. Everyone got it. And then, oh my God, you got to show them in the line. There's going to be hour-long wait-ups at the restaurant. No, none of that happens. It becomes a process, a protocol that we all accept.
And you feel safer. You go to a restaurant, or you have a meal, or you go into a public place, you feel secure because everybody's been checked. You don't feel you're going to have to come into contact with people who've not been vaccinated.
I want to show it everywhere. I go to 7-Eleven. I want to show my passport. However, now Trudeau.
The water has been muddied now.
Yes, Trudeau and his government have now introduced a federal vaccine passport for traveling and who knows what else. I just wish there could have been some dialogue, because, the adapting to the change of this new process was challenging. I had to help my mother, who was an older woman. There were some challenges with older folks getting these passports and paper passports. A lot of them don't have phones. Now we got to get another one. What do you think?
Well, let's see what Justin Trudeau has to say about it.
We're very confident that this proof of vaccination certificate that will be federally approved, issued by the provinces with the health information for Canadians, is going to be accepted at destinations worldwide as proof of vaccination.
So that's the word now from Justin Trudeau. So the question is, why didn't the federal and provincial governments fully coordinate these cards? They did manage to do it in Ontario and Quebec. Why not in British Columbia? Here's John Horgan.
The federal government's test is much higher for international travel, and we said so at the time that we implemented our immunization card, that at the point where the borders are open, particularly, of course, to the south of us, and those who want to travel internationally are going to require some other form of identification distributed and approved by the federal government.
So now we know we have to have 2 passports if we want to fly in Canada or internationally, and to show that we've had our vaccine shots. And let's just restate this quickly. British Columbians will need both a federal and provincial vaccine passport in the future if they want to travel. And that's traveling by air or traveling by car across the border. And I want to state clearly here, this is not the provincial government's fault. In fact, the John Horgan government saw those variant numbers begin to leap up, and they immediately rose to the occasion. They took action, and they moved forward on the vaccination passports well before many of the other provinces were ready. They knew this was important. They needed to get on top of the variant. And as a result, a lot of people who are on the fence about getting their shots have now gone and got their vaccinations. It's made us all safer. It was the right move. In the meantime, the federal government's response is a different story. Justin Trudeau, in fact, did say there would be federal regulations coming up with new passports, and he talked about this even back last winter. So what happened? Why the delay? Well, of course, there was a federal election. They got a little sidetracked. But the simpler answer is federal bureaucrats failed to act quickly. And now every British Columbian will be inconvenienced, at least for now.
Bang on. It's complicated to travel now. I'm reading these stories on Facebook and social media, and folks are, they have to go here and they have to go there. In other countries, I have a relative traveling in a month to the US, extra $2,000 to travel. And then now you're adding a federal passport, a federal vaccine passport. Okay, I'm sure we'll have many things to talk about in the future about this. However, now time to shift gears.
Back to street crime, back to crime and criminals and criminal justice, right, John?
Shifting gears, baby, shifting gears. We've talked a lot recently, and had others talk about crime in downtown Victoria. A very integral topic for businesses that we address this issue, and then the police are frustrated, arresting people that seem to then be back on the street hours later. How has this happened? What's going on? How can you run a business? How can you walk downtown? How can you buy anything down there when this seeming chaos is happening? Joining us to talk about the Canadian justice system today is Troy DeSouza. Specializes in representing local government clients and has gone to trial, eventually, Supreme Court, Court of Appeal. Wow. He's a partner in Dominion GovLaw. Let's zoom him in.
Now joining us in the Rumble Room for the first time is Troy DeSouza. Great to have you here on this fine day, Troy.
Thanks, Robin, and good to be here too.
Now, according to Stats Canada, we've seen the crime rate in Victoria rising steadily. Serious crime index shows that that's increasing as well. And we've talked to the police. We had the police union here last week, and they're talking about how exhausted their members are. Some of the members are looking at moving out of Victoria and going to Saanich or Oak Bay or anywhere else because they have so much pressure. And they're so frustrated, Troy, because they're arresting people downtown, people who are on the street or doing bad things, breaking and entering, selling drugs, doing all the things that get you arrested. And they're frustrated because of, like, the next day, these people are back on the street and they're doing the same thing. It's being called catch and release. So how did we get here? I mean, what's the situation? Why is this happening?
Well, we've had an evolution of enforcement that's essentially gone towards getting minor offenses to be dealt with in a much more less severe way than they've been dealt with in the past. So it's been a combination of not just through the judiciary, which tends to lead with some lower fine penalties or minor penalties in sentencing, but also through the Crown Counsel's office, which is looking at prioritizing what they're actually going to proceed with. And if you may appreciate, Crown Counsel has a lot of work that they're dealing with, and they have some limited resources. They're government lawyers essentially, and so they're making a triage situation where they're going to deal with serious offenses like assaults and rapes and murders and things like that, and try to plea out or not even approve charges on a lot of minor offenses. So in our firm at GovLaw, we work with regulatory law enforcers, whether they're police, bylaw officers, anyone who's enforcing the laws. And one consistent theme we found with the police, which has led to a lot of frustration, is charge approval. In order in British Columbia here to get people charged and then proceed with a process, Crown approves those charges, and they're not approving the minor ones. So that's the source of a lot of their frustration.
And why not? You talked about a lack of resources. Aren't there enough judges? Don't we have enough courts? Is the government not doing its job in terms of properly funding our justice system?
Well, it's a well-known fact that there are not enough judges right now in the provincial court. So that's a fact. The other part of this is that there's the volume of the cases that have gone up. Cases that used to take 1 or 2 days now take 3 or 4 days. So that's increased the time and the scope of what's involved. So when we come back to the Crown Counsel approving charges, they're just looking at this from a management point of view. And that says, well, we're just not going to deal with that. And, we've also had some policy changes, legal changes, as you know, when we decriminalized marijuana, that sort of made that not an offense anymore. So a lot of related type of matters associated with that have gone down the wayside as well. They're seen as very minor misdemeanors, so they're not necessarily going to be proving charges as all. So if police are bringing folks in and they're coming back out, that is simply there as a catch and release, and that is frustrating.
Well, I want to touch on that, Troy. I mean, they're talking about warehousing our homeless and putting them in hotels and in apartment buildings that have been purchased by the province. And I think it was a good first step. I don't think that that's a bad move, but they don't have the programs within that to really support those people. As a result, a lot of them are going back out on the street. Stephen Andrew, the city councillor, actually did a tour one morning of the homeless situation down in Pandora and found a number of people that actually have places to live inside, but they chose to be in the tents because they want to be back in the community. And we've had Mothers Against the Harm saying the best thing for people addicted to drugs is to be put somewhere and locked down until they get well. People from our place are saying the same thing about the mentally ill. They need to be helped and they need to be in a secure environment. Why isn't that happening?
Right. Well, and that's all provincial jurisdiction, right? So that's all the people who are responsible for that. And what we see with people on the streets, it's a combination of things. Yes, there are some homeless, but a lot of them also, there's mental addictions, there's drug addictions, and there's criminal elements as well. So it all gets caught up into that vortex. And then you add some social justice advocates, and it turns into a bigger thing than it should be. It takes over public spaces. What needs to happen is that people do need to get the services that they need, like mental or detox services, so that they're not found back on the streets. They're not going back into the same revolving door policy. I'm not sure if many people are aware that there was a former Liberal MLA provincially, Lauren Mayencourt, who started a community called A New Hope, 40 kilometers outside Prince George, actually. It was on a former Air Force base. And the concept for that was you take addicted people and you just keep them a little bit segregated so they can go through that process of rehabilitating their lives. And it was fascinating because, he said there are people that don't know how to boil an egg or make toast. And you got to start from that very basic grounding so that they can empower themselves and stay away from those other sources of buddies and friends who have the same drugs, that they come out of detox, they're back downtown, they're offered something, and then they're back in the cycle. So they actually have to break the cycle, and then you'll have a better chance, I think, of rehabilitating those people.
Okay, so you've alluded to some of the points in my next question. But I'm going to be the just your normal small business guy. I'm not a lawyer. I'm the fellow trying to make a living, in the streets of Victoria. And there's a sense, that some folks are treated differently. Okay, so that there are different parts of law. The folks with drug problems, mental health problems, they seem to have a different set of consequences than the more serious drug smugglers, the gangs, the serious criminals. You've alluded to that throughout our conversation, but can you expand again? Okay, I'm just the typical small business guy seeing one set of rules for this person and another for this person. What are your opinions on that?
And it hurts business having these people out on our streets. How do you get business down if people don't want to come downtown because those people are there to confront them?
For sure. And I think that's the big part of that equation in the downtown cores, urban areas particularly. It doesn't matter if it's Victoria, Prince George, Vancouver, you're all going to have this urban core. And you've got a couple of things, and John mentioned them. Yes, there are those people who are we call it the addicted, some of the homeless, some of the folks with mental issues, right? Those you can be categorized in a small group as victims. You got the hardcore criminals, and they're going to be categorized obviously more seriously, and they're the ones I think that the Crown and the police do need to take seriously, because they're going to interact and feed some of those folks that are in that same cycle, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you got the members of the public who, and it's not just business owners, but just like the little old lady walking down the street who's going to get assaulted because she looks at someone the wrong way, right? And it has happened in the city of Victoria, right? It's unacceptable. One of the ways that you have to step up is it's not just about services such as all the social services that are available and are existing, and they should continue that, but they should also focus and target those on the mental and the addiction programs as well. But it's also about enforcement. It is also about enforcement. And I can tell you, as a kid growing up in Victoria, the streets back in the early 80s downtown were very different than the streets that we have today. I mean, some of the things that we would just be shocked at. I mean, nobody ever back in the 80s would shoot up in public in a downtown area. It would just not be heard of. They'd be arrested right away. But that kind of thing is sort of looked askance these days. And we're not talking marijuana. We're talking about real drugs, right? So that to me is a sense of the psychology of people accepting behaviors that we never accepted before, and that impacts the criminal justice system. So until we have that leadership at a elected official level that says, look, we've got to make this a total package so we can actually clean up the streets and everything is on the table, we're going to continue to get what has already happened in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle. It's coming our way, and we need to look at those failed solutions that they did back then and not have it come to British Columbia. There is another alternative, though, too. And what we're finding working for local governments is that we are using regulatory tools that actually municipalities have their powers under their bylaws to do similar forms of arrests for serious offenses. So, for instance, serious repeat offenders of bylaw offenses, you can actually arrest them and then release on undertakings, court-ordered undertakings, to comply with the laws. And that tends to solve a lot of the lower-level crime issues. And we actually call that catch and comply, because there's actually a result to what we're trying to do. And in some cases, these folks have actually left the town, left the community, and we don't have a problem with that.
Wow, Robin, like so much important information about our legal system, really, that I didn't know about. You know that there are these pillars. There's law enforcement, there's governance, there's legal. You don't.
Well, a lot of people, John, would be surprised to know you haven't spent more time in court.
Well, that'll be another show, Robin. But how those three pillars interact is something we don't get to see. And so I was fascinated by Troy's insight into a system, and really his passion about making our community better, not from necessarily the political side, but from the legal side. And so, okay, so boy, oh boy, that was fascinating. Now we're going to go into I so-called my profile, this man on the street, this kind of small business person, and how crime and rehabilitation and tent cities and all of these issues are impacting business people in downtown Victoria.
This is our build-up for next week, right?
Totally. We're going to have outspoken business owner and one-time mayoral candidate, Gary Byers, join us. Gary has a lot to say. He's an owner of a business called Tesseract Computers, and he's going to tell us how business has suffered during this pandemic. He will no doubt have a lot to say. I can't wait.
Yeah, me too, John. You know, I've known Gary for quite some time myself.
Oh, okay.
I actually had some computer work done by Tesseract a number of years ago. And I actually got to know him a little bit indirectly because I worked at the Legislative Press Gallery for several years when I was at Czech TV. And I worked alongside Hubert Byers, Gary's father, who worked with the news group, was a longtime political writer and a very colorful guy who I really enjoyed. So I met Gary kind of almost through Hubert. And boy, a couple of outspoken guys. You'd love to sit around their Christmas table and hear some of the ranting going on. And it's great to have that kind of energy going into the program next week. And we're certainly looking, John, to try to get more energy for all the people that we want to invite to the show. And I hope before we say goodbye, you could again, in your usual colorful way, talk about how we can invite and encourage people to become part of the Rumble Room gang.
Well, increasingly, people are listening. So that means they must be coming to the very end of our shows and hearing how to connect. And there's so many ways. But primarily, I think I would encourage folks to join our Facebook page at Victoria Rumble Room. That is where you will get notification of these amazing shows and the antics that we're always up to. There's a Twitter page, which gets a lot of, it's an interesting communication tool. On TikTok, we got craziness. However, lots of eyeballs. And of course, our videos live on our YouTube site, Victoria Rumble Room with John and Robin. In the meantime, however, as we wrap up our show, as the handsome and intelligent, obviously thin, full of hair, Croatia 007, Johnny Udicic, have a great Halloween, everyone.
Yes, the lung that speaks. And I'm Rockin' Robin Adair, and rumble on.